we're going to be working on making a bobble head, a little Martian bobble head. It's made in 2 pieces. The head that's removable, and then the body, the feet. So this technique, you're going to teach the kids how to make a pinch pot, and then just to make the base. With this project, the kids can be very, very creative. As a teacher, you want to teach them just how the technique in making the pinch pot and the feet, and then you'll allow them to be very creative, whatever they want to make, whether it be an animal, a human. There's just a few details they need to stick to. You don't want to have anything coming way out that's going to protrude and may break in the handling process. So you want to keep everything very tight, but allow the kids to be expressive. First of all, we're going to start off with making their head. Start off with making a pinch pot. Thumb to start it with, to pierce the thumb. Make sure the kids have their thumb straight to go into the ball. A lot of them tend to try and push their thumb in like this. Just make sure it's straight. So they're going straight in, hand on the top, and you push in, and then you start the process of doing the pinching. Also stress that they need to keep their thumb in the inside, fingers on the outside. By doing this, they can keep it a nice long pinch pot. If they tend to do it this way, they tend to flare out. So you want this to be nice and rounded. So you're just going to pinch, starting from the top, squeezing and turning, squeeze, turn. You'll keep going all the way down, starting from the top, working your way down, until you come to a shape like this. You want to come in and you want to smooth, make sure this area here is smooth. It doesn't matter so much about this part here, but the very end where the foot is going to pivot on the very top, it needs to be nice and round. And you almost need to make a little dent in there so it's got somewhere to pivot on. But that's what you'll judge when you finish up the project. That's the last part you do. Once you've got your pinch pot, some of the tools that I'm using a knife. It can be a bread and butter knife, it can be a plastic knife. I have a chopstick. I have a wooden skewer with a point on the end. I have a wire tool for the hollowing out of the feet. I have my slip, very important, and then also I have just a plastic knife for scoring. And I also use an old credit card for cleaning up. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up the pinch pot now. I'm scraping off any dried clay that might be on there. Coming along, once again, the thumb goes one side, fingers on the other side. This way they can get a nice curve. Fingers on the outside, thumb in, and they're going to come from the bottom and pull up. And each time you pull up, clean the clay off. And pulling up. Otherwise you end up with all these little ridges of old clay that you're pulling off. And that it's going around like this. Teach the children to be patient, take care in what they're doing. Details are very important. Okay, so with this one here, I'm just going to make some little spikes coming out of its head. A good way to make sure these things aren't going to fall off is a technique, and just by going on the inside, and I'm just going in and I'm just piercing a hole. And I'm pushing it out. So this way the clay is sort of coming out. So I'm going to make 3 of these. Just like that. This will save the kids doing any coiling. And then these are the little spikes that I have made. And that's just by getting a long piece of clay, squeezing harder on one side of the hand. It's just like making a little chocolate kiss. And then they can just push it down like this. So I've got 3 of these. Now, you've got to tell the children how important it is to score. And I find it easy to really go through this. One of the first things I tell them to do, I explain to them about putting 2 smooth surfaces together, and then how that's going to separate in the kiln. And then I tell them how it is by putting nice scored pieces, it's going to last through the process. Now I've scored this here, and then I come in with my skewer, and then I just score the inside. just like that on all three. And you can also put a little bit of slip in there. You don't need any expensive tools for these projects. Okay, so now I have scored and slip. Just going to pierce it in. Pierce this one in. And then I made another one here. Put my slip on and put that in. Okay, this one here is too tall, so I'm going to open up the hole a little more. Just having the clay come up. And stick that in there. Okay, now they can turn it upside down, so now you have the clay coming through. And all they need to do is just push that clay down. Now I'm going to make sure the one I have in the centre here is exactly where the legs are going to pivot on, so I really got to make sure that one's smoothed down. Now those things aren't going to be going anywhere, so they're nice and firm. And you can come in, they can come with their chopstick and they can do the cleanup. Just for time's sake, I'm not going to do too much of that, but they can use that and they come in and they push it all down. Get nice and clean. Okay, now we're going to do the eyes. I've rolled a little ball. And one of my handy little tools too, I always use fishing line filament to cut clay with. So I have a little ball on the end, my fishing line filament. I find using fishing line filament, it doesn't distort the clay when I cut it. So I just want to cut this one little ball in half. I have two equal halves. I'm going to score it. Put some slip on here, score, put eyeball there, what I like to do is I like to make eyelids. This gives character, so to speak, a little coil, squish it down. When kids make animals, they make anything that has eyes, fish, doesn't matter what. Try to get them to make eyelids, because it really does make it look very realistic, and you can do a lot of expressions. But it's got to be scored, got to score. Just going to wrap that over. You come down. So you tuck it in. Once again, they're going to come with you can come with a chopstick. And just flatten that down. Once again, for time's sake, I'm doing a little bit of a sloppy job. And you can also do a bottom eyelid too, but we're not going to do that today. Now, since it's a Martian, I'm going to do a third eye up here. This one is a whole complete ball. Going to screw it on a little so it's got good amount of grip there. And I need to make a little eyelid to go on there. Slip and score. And I'm just going to use a tool to make his eyes. And for his mouth, I'm just going to use the end of the chopstick. Pierce through. And I'm also going to come in from the inside. I'm just going to make some little bumps on his skin by pushing through. I don't want to come up too high up here because that's where it's going to pivot, so I want to keep that smooth. So I'm just making the bumps. I'm just giving a nice texture to the clay too. It's sort of cracking a little bit, which is nice when you go to add the glaze. Okay, and I think I'll just come at the top here, make a little texture on the top as antenna, like that. Okay, so now we're going to make the foot. So I'm just starting off with a large piece of clay like this. I'm going to make it This is going to have little arms on him, so I'm going to come a little higher so I can have space to put his arms up here. But I want it to look like a Martian, so I'm not going to make actually feet. I'm going to make a little floating pad. So I have a big piece like that, so I'm just going to come in, carve a bit of that out of the centre. You want a fair bit of volume down here because this has to support and balance, so you want some weight down here, so you're not going to go too thin. When it dries out a little bit, when I'm finished, I'm going to come in, going to get my chopstick, and I'm going to pierce it all the way up and just rotate it, so I'm getting a bit of a hollow going all the way up. Okay, so now I'm going to do some little arms on him. Going to keep them close to the body. Just going to flatten off the ends. Now once again, I'm going to, since I'm adding, I'm just going to make a little hole here. I just find this method a lot better than just sticking something on and putting a coil on it. Things tend to fall off. By doing this, you're giving it a lot more space to grab. So I'm just going to score it. Scoring inside. Squishing it down. Same thing with this. Scoring it and slipping it. Plugging it in. Now, just going to tuck his arms in a little bit because I don't want them coming out too far. Now I'm going to shape the top of the head up here. You want to feel it, you've got to make sure this is very smooth up the top. Now since this one here is standing straight up, in the center, it's sort of in the center, you don't have to worry about moving this around. And one of the other ones that I had done, which is the little people legs, you actually have to, if the feet are coming out the front, you have to move the body, bend the body a little bit further so that the center is over the flattest point of the feet. And you'll see that when you put the head on, it'll start to tip over on you otherwise. Okay, so this looks good. Okay, so he's sitting good. What you're going to do is, as this dries, you're going to come back and you're going to rebalance it again, because you'll see, since it's a little sticky in here, it's still wet, it's going to stay, it's going to move differently. But you want to get a nice little point, like at the end of your little finger, I would guess, up here. So that's going to pivot on there, you're going to allow it to pivot. When you're making these, you're going to make sure that they're not getting too wide here with the body, because you've got to allow this to be able to move, so he can move around. If they come too wide, or if the arms are up here, it would be stuck and you can't move it. So make sure you have plenty of space on for it to pivot like this. Now, just for a few other little details, I'm just going to make some little feet. Actually, I'm going to use the end of my bead. Just going to give it some texture around the bottom. Kids can do whatever they want, but I'm just adding like little toes around it. The kids can come along and get very creative with it. And that's really about it. So when it dries a little bit, come back and check it. Get the kids to work on the details of cleaning it up. And that is the Martian bobblehead.